It was 9 p.m. on a Thursday, and I stood outside the Hilton Hotel in downtown Albany. I wasn't there as a guest, but to catch my wife. She was inside with her boyfriend, Brian. She thought I was clueless, but I had known for months. It ate at me every day, and tonight, I decided to put an end to it. For a long time, I let her affair slide, thinking she'd come back to me. But Sarah never did. She kept seeing Brian while pretending to be a loyal wife. Our conversations about the future, the house we'd buy, the kids we might have, all lies. I couldn't understand why she didn't just leave me if I wasn't enough anymore. But instead, she chose to deceive me, stringing me along while she lived another life. At first, I thought I could tolerate it, that maybe it was a phase. I worked 18-hour days at the hospital, and maybe she felt neglected. I didn't think I was a bad husband, but maybe I wasn't giving her what she needed. Still, she never talked to me. Instead, she chose Brian, a local businessman with a wife and kids of his own. And she kept lying. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it would pass. But after months with no change, I decided enough was enough. It took me a while to accept that I was going to have to confront her, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I wasn't looking for violence. Brian wasn't worth it, and my lawyer warned me against it. I just wanted to end things and maybe make her feel a fraction of the pain she caused me. I'm Alex Thompson, 31, born and raised in Albany. I'm an ER doctor, though I've been on leave recently. My doctor suggested it after I started burning out, especially after I found out about Sarah's affair. Sarah, my wife of 5 years, is 30 and works at a national bank. We live in a nice 2-bedroom apartment, no kids. Thankfully, there are no children involved in this mess. I first met Sarah in college, and I was drawn to her immediately. She's beautiful, about 5 feet 8 inches, long brunette hair, and the kind of woman who turns heads wherever she goes. We started dating, moved in together, and eventually got married after I finished med school. My parents helped me avoid huge debts, and I worked summers in my dad's construction business to help pay for tuition. Hard work has always been a part of my life, but lately, it's felt like it's never enough. Not for Sarah. The first time I heard about her affair, it was almost by accident. A nurse from the hospital mentioned seeing Sarah out at a restaurant with Brian. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I thought we were building a life together. We had plans, talked about kids, looked at houses. We even opened a savings account to put down a deposit on a house. My salary as an ER doctor was rising, and Sarah earned good money too. We were stable, comfortable, and I thought, happy. But the reality was different. Brian had been in her life for nearly 2 years. The nurse's tip was the start, and when I confronted Sarah about it, she tried to deny it at first, her face going pale. But I wasn't dumb. I could see through her excuses. After talking to my dad and some close friends, I realized I needed to protect myself. I hired a private investigator to dig into her affair, and within a week, I had all the proof I needed. Brian had been renting hotel rooms almost weekly for 2 years, and Sarah was right there with him. That's why I found myself at the Hilton. I watched them stroll into the lobby and head up to the 12th floor. I sat there for a while, going over my plan. I didn't intend to cause a scene, but I was done playing the fool. I approached the front desk and asked to call Brian Cooper's room. Brian wasn't some random guy. He had a wife and 2 sons. Sarah was his loan officer at the bank. It all felt so calculated, so cold. How long had she been lying to me? I remembered the moment I found out, when I casually mentioned to Sarah that Jessica, the nurse, had seen her at a restaurant. Her face went white, but she quickly covered it up with a fake smile, brushing it off like it was nothing. The week after, I spoke with my dad, who was just as stunned as I was. We came up with a plan, and I started setting things in motion. I even talked to my supervisor at the hospital, and she recommended I take some time off to deal with it all. It was then that I decided I'd had enough. I cleared out our bank account, packed my essentials, and prepared to leave. Sarah thought I was working another long shift when she headed to meet Brian that night. But instead, I was packing my Honda Africa Twin for a road trip. I'd mapped out a route across North America, avoiding highways, just sticking to back roads and small towns. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I had to get away from the wreckage Sarah had left behind. Before leaving, I had to face Sarah. I approached the hotel desk and asked to call Brian Cooper's room. When he answered, I calmly said, "May I speak to Sarah Thompson?" Brian hesitated before replying, "There's no one here by that name." I stayed firm. "Tell her Alex Thompson died today. There's been a death in her family." I hung up and handed the phone back to the startled clerk, then walked out, finally heading toward freedom. Inside the hotel, Sarah panicked. She thought something had happened to me and rushed home. But when she got there, I was already gone. Instead, she found a note with my wedding ring. It was simple: "Sarah, consider me dead. Our marriage has been over for a long time. I took what I wanted. The rest is yours. I've told the management company I've moved out. Don't look for me. I'm taking a break from work, life, and your affair with Brian. My attorney will be in touch. Alex." I had cleared out most of my things, leaving behind the memories I no longer wanted. Sarah tried calling me, but my number was disconnected. When she called my parents, my father told her to go to hell. She wandered through the apartment, realizing the depth of her betrayal and the consequences. She knew she had ruined everything. As for me, I had checked into a nearby hotel, drained but feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. That night, I saw Sarah rush out of the Hilton and into a cab, likely thinking she could still control the damage. She thought she had all night to play around with Brian, while I worked another long shift. Little did she know, I was already gone. I packed light for the road: clothes, my iPad, and the essentials. I took off on my Honda Africa Twin, a motorcycle built for long-distance travel. I didn't go far that first night, just across the river to a Holiday Inn. That marked the true end of my marriage and the beginning of something new. The next morning, Sarah showed up at my parents' house, hoping to talk to me. My mom slammed the door in her face, but she kept ringing the bell. Finally, my dad opened the door. "He's gone," he said flatly. "Even if I knew where he was, I wouldn't tell you." Sarah begged for a chance to explain herself, but my dad wasn't having any of it. "You expect forgiveness after what you've done? Get off my doorstep." Sarah spent the rest of the weekend frantically calling my friends, family, even my coworkers. No one was willing to help her. When she showed up at the hospital, an ER nurse named Jessica, who had been the one to tell me about her affair, gave her a drink and told her that everyone knew I wouldn't be back for a long while. Meanwhile, I was far away from Albany, enjoying the open road. Newfoundland was breathtaking, with its rugged landscapes and friendly locals. For over a week, I explored the island, taking in the scenery and trying to forget the mess I'd left behind. I even encountered a moose on the road, managing to swerve just in time. In Petty Harbor, after visiting Cape Spear, I got a flat tire. Locals quickly offered to help, something I rarely experienced back in Albany. While my bike was being repaired in St. John's, I stayed at a small hotel, took the chance to do laundry, recharge, and reflect on everything. The place was clean and had a cozy bar where I could quietly drink and think about the road ahead. This journey was about more than just escaping Sarah. It was about rediscovering who I was, now that my life had been completely uprooted. At the repair shop, I met Lily Martinez, a captivating German woman on a motorcycle journey across the globe, with Morocco as her next stop. After talking about our travels, we decided to grab dinner at the Salty Cod. I hadn't felt this comfortable with anyone in a long time. The next morning, I woke up with her beside me. She was not just beautiful but refreshing, and for the first time in a while, I felt a spark of excitement about what lay ahead. Lily had already traveled over 40,000 miles and was planning to ride along the coast of Africa. Her adventure seemed far more thrilling than mine. As we shared stories, I realized I needed something more challenging than just riding around North America. I needed to leave behind the remnants of my old life, Sarah, and the constant reminders of my past. That evening, I surprised myself by asking Lily if I could join her on her African journey. "Are you sure about that?" she asked, amused. "Yeah, I think Africa is exactly what I need. Something completely different," I replied. She smiled, but warned me that the trip wouldn't be easy, especially when it came to shipping my motorcycle to Africa. After some phone calls to the shop, I arranged for my bike to be shipped the next day. It took money and effort, but 2 days later, we were on a plane from St. John's to Casablanca via Toronto, Paris, and Lisbon. Each step away from Albany felt like shedding a layer of the past. What I didn't know at the time was that Lily had checked up on me before agreeing to travel together. She contacted a friend in Berlin whose husband worked with the German police. They confirmed my background, Alex Thompson, an ER physician from Albany, who had taken a sabbatical due to a recent divorce after his wife's affair. Lily even received a picture to verify my identity. Knowing she had done her homework made me feel oddly reassured. Lily, too, had experienced the pain of betrayal, having ended a relationship after discovering her partner had cheated. It made me realize how much we had in common. She had been traveling solo for months, covering over 30,000 miles. While she enjoyed the freedom of traveling alone, it could also be isolating. Lily planned to write a book about her experiences as a solo female motorcycle traveler, complete with photos and videos. She even considered starting a YouTube channel to document her adventures. I admired her independence and determination. Meanwhile, Sarah's life back in Albany was spiraling. After 2 months without hearing from me, she was starting to accept that our marriage might be over. She still wondered if I would come back, but deep down, she knew the damage was done. Brian, the man she had been having an affair with, ended their relationship, worried his wife was suspicious. Sarah was left feeling lonely, isolated in the apartment that once belonged to both of us. Her guilt was palpable, but she justified her actions by blaming me for always being absent, putting work ahead of our marriage. Brian briefly re-entered her life, suggesting they resume their affair since his wife seemed less suspicious, but Sarah was torn. She knew it wasn't right, but she longed for the intimacy that had disappeared from our marriage. While Sarah was dealing with her conflicted emotions, Casablanca offered me a chance to start over. The city, known as Aldar al-Baida, Morocco's main port, was a vibrant mix of tradition and modernity. Lily and I stayed at a modest hotel, waiting for our bikes to arrive. We spent the days exploring the city's markets, tasting the local food, and learning about its history. I was enthralled by the newness of it all, the culture, the people, and the sense of freedom. We ended up staying in Casablanca for 8 nights, due to a delay with the ship carrying our bikes. Those nights were some of the best I'd had in years. Morocco's beauty was breathtaking, but so was Lily. She wasn't just beautiful. She was smart, capable, and adventurous. Traveling with her made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. I had found something, or someone, that sparked something new in me, a sense of possibility and excitement. The more time I spent with Lily, the more I realized how much I had been missing in my old life. She represented everything I hadn't had: freedom, adventure, and independence. As I waited for my bike to arrive, I reflected on how much my life had already changed. I was no longer the man stuck in Albany, trapped in a broken marriage. I was someone new, someone free to explore the world without the burdens of the past weighing me down. Lily taught me a lot about adventure riding. She had moved on after her long-term boyfriend left her for another woman. In Casablanca, I bought essential equipment: fuel, tools, LED headlights, GPS, riding gear, and a small gas stove. We planned to stay at local inns and eat local food, which took some getting used to, but Lily helped me adjust. I received a letter from my attorney saying Sarah hadn't contacted me, but I didn't care. She was off with someone else, pretending to care about me. What a joke. After Casablanca, we rode to Marrakesh via El Jadida and El Baidouza, taking an indirect scenic route. The journey took 5 days and over 1,300 kilometers, and it was the best trip of my life. Lily, who spoke multiple languages, was invaluable. Marrakesh, a blend of old and new with 1 million people, was incredible. We stayed in a modest hotel with secure parking for our bikes, her BMW F800 GS and my trusty Africa Twin. Every day felt like an adventure in a world unlike the one I'd grown up in. Morocco was eye-opening. Despite the cultural differences, people shared the same desires for family, security, and a better future. Morocco, though not perfect, had stability compared to many other African countries. This trip made me appreciate how much I had taken for granted growing up in the safety of New York. I was learning to let go of my fears and embrace new experiences, with Lily by my side, challenging me and opening my eyes to the world. Lily was more than just a travel companion. She was smart, adventurous, and full of common sense. I felt alive with her, something I hadn't felt in years. I couldn't imagine going back to my old life in Albany. Lily enjoyed traveling with me, 2. She saw how my life in the U.S. had been all about doing the right things. University, medical school, marriage, only for it to fall apart because my wife couldn't support me. Lily wasn't out to take my place in Sarah's life, but she recognized Sarah's neglect had led me to this new path. She had her own goals, including writing a guidebook for women traveling solo on motorcycles. As much as we connected, Lily was committed to finishing her adventure. From Marrakesh, we rode to Lyon, a journey of 900 kilometers along the coast. The dusty, vast landscape was breathtaking, but also required respect. My American passport wasn't as recognized here as Lily's EU one. At the borders, guards often asked why I left the U.S. Pointing to Lily usually got a laugh, and they understood. We camped 2 nights on our way to Lyon, avoiding thieves by staying off the road. It was nerve-wracking at first, but I got used to it. We always prioritized gasoline, water, and food, paying in cash to avoid attention. Traveling through parts of West Africa felt as dangerous as the U.S., and our expensive motorcycles made us potential targets. Western Sahara and Mauritania were unlike anything I'd ever seen. Dry, dusty, and brutal, yet stunning in their own way. We communicated through Bluetooth helmets, with Lily sharing insights about the region. Her constant chatter was both fascinating and reassuring as we navigated the empty, foreign landscape. Next, we set out for Dakar, Senegal, over 1,800 kilometers away. The heat and dust were relentless, and Lily reminded me to drink water constantly. I emptied my 4-liter Camelback daily. We stopped for breaks, and I once tried to snap a picture of Lily squatting, which led to a hilarious chase. The ride through the Sahara was repetitive, just wide-open space. We carried extra fuel and had to use it a few times. My bike, with its larger engine, consumed more gasoline than Lily's, so I considered getting an extra gas tank. We had a breakdown and spent 3 hours fixing it on the side of the road. Despite the heat and dust, camping and being with Lily still felt amazing. The journey was challenging, but I was becoming addicted to this new way of life, free from the confines of Albany and the shadow of my past. We washed the essentials with minimal water and soap and crossed into Senegal at the Diama border, avoiding the more complicated Rosso crossing. Nearby St. Louis, a city divided between islands, had striking contrasts between wealth and poverty. We stayed at Hotel de la Poste, a modest place with secure parking and police nearby, which made it feel safe. After resting from our desert journey, I checked my email. Sarah, my estranged wife, had reached out, asking where I was and when I'd be back in Albany. I told my parents and attorney not to disclose my location. Our marriage was overdue to her long affair. If she didn't file for divorce soon, I would. After 2 wonderful days in St. Louis, Lily and I set off for Dakar, 300 kilometers away. But our plans quickly changed when we encountered a bus accident. A family on a scooter, carrying a propane tank, had hit a pothole, causing the bus to crash. I rushed to help the injured. The father was pinned under the bus, the children were bleeding, and the mother was unconscious, the propane tank under her. I focused on the mother while Lily helped the children. Despite our first aid efforts, the father needed more help than we could provide. The police did little beyond directing traffic, but eventually, ambulances arrived, and the family was taken to the hospital. A police officer, learning I was a doctor, asked me to accompany them to the hospital to describe the injuries. At the hospital, which was outdated but clean, I stitched up the children's cuts and instructed Lily on how to assist me. We spent hours helping patients, and the experience deepened my respect for Lily's resilience. We stayed in St. Louis for 3 more days as I worked over 30 hours straight. Word of a visiting doctor spread, and more patients arrived. Despite the exhaustion, it was rewarding to help, though I knew the locals wouldn't have regular medical help again after I left. We then set off for Dakar, Senegal's capital, where the stark contrast between wealth and poverty struck me. Expensive cars shared the streets with dilapidated scooters, yet there wasn't much animosity. Everyone was just trying to survive. The experience broadened my view, and Sarah's infidelity seemed to have pushed me to explore a world I'd never known. Lily and I stayed at a beach hotel in Dakar, where we took time to relax. Though we usually split costs, I covered the bill this time. I could sense Lily's finances were tight, and we both needed a break after the intensity of St. Louis. While in Dakar, Reality hit when I received an email from the chief administrator at Albany General Hospital, asking me to return due to a staff illness. My leave was initially set for 3 months, with a possible extension to 6, but they needed me back sooner. For now, I ignored the email, determined to make the most of the remaining time with Lily. Our next goal was Namibia, a long ride through challenging terrain. We arranged to ship our bikes from Dakar and took a memorable flight to Windhoek. The final leg of our journey to Cape Town took 5 days, and knowing our time together was ending, we cherished every moment. Our connection deepened, and I realized I was falling in love with Lily. Despite the bond we shared, I knew I had to return to work, and Lily needed to focus on her book and video editing. She was under pressure to finish her project, and money was running low. We flew to Frankfurt together, where we returned our bikes, mine to storage and Alex's back to the U.S. Our goodbye at the airport was difficult. He kissed me and whispered that he loved me. I knew it wasn't the last time I'd see him, but the separation was tough. Back in Albany, I checked into a hotel and received a surprise visit from my brother, James. He asked how I was doing and invited me to dinner. It was time to reconnect with family and settle back into life at home. After dinner, I headed to the hospital to meet with my boss, ready to face my next chapter. James called Nicole to tell her I was coming for dinner. On my way, I passed the building where Sarah worked, a familiar sight that triggered a swirl of emotions. It felt surreal to be back in Albany, navigating the streets where I had once envisioned a stable future with Sarah. Dr. Johnson, the hospital administrator, was glad to see me and mentioned receiving a letter from the Senegalese government thanking me for my assistance in St. Louis. I explained the harrowing story about the family on the scooter and the overturned bus. She found it strange, but appreciated the effort I had made to help. Later, the ambulance chief briefed me on the current situation and put me back on the schedule for 12-hour shifts starting tomorrow. As I drove to James and Nicole's house, a mix of excitement and anxiety filled me. I was looking forward to reconnecting with family, yet dreading the inevitable questions about my recent past. When I arrived, Nicole greeted me with a warm hug. "Alex, how are you? We've all missed you," she said, her smile brightening the room. I replied, "I'm fine, thanks," before handing out small gifts I had picked up during my travels. The kids quickly scampered off to play, leaving the adults to settle into more serious matters. Nicole wasted no time getting to the point. "What happened between you and Sarah? Why did you leave?" I appreciated her directness, but I knew this would be a long conversation. "Good to see you too, Nicole. A beer would be great if you have one," I replied, and James signaled that he'd expected this, fetching 3 beers from the kitchen. As we sat down, I felt their expectant gazes on me. "So you want to know what's going on with me?" I began, glancing at both of them. "What did Mom and Dad tell you?" Nicole looked frustrated. "Nothing. I even tried talking to Sarah, but she wouldn't say anything. She just wanted information from me." Taking a deep breath, I summarized the past 5 months: the motorcycle trip, my relationship with Lily, and the painful realization of Sarah's infidelity. I touched on her affair without delving into the investigator's report, choosing to focus on my journey rather than the heartache. Over dinner, accompanied by more beers, I shared stories about my travels, the people I met, and the breathtaking landscapes I had seen. Lily, now back in Berlin, had become a significant part of my story, and I felt a pang of longing as I spoke of her. "I'm looking for a place to stay until I sort out my divorce and future plans," I added, glancing at their concerned faces. The trip with Lily opened my eyes, and I can't go back to pretending to be happy at the hospital. The thought of Sarah made me feel weak. She had deceived me for so long. I resolved never to allow that to happen again. I realized there were many good women in the world, honest women with integrity, unlike Sarah. If she had wanted out, why hadn't she just said so? We could have divorced earlier instead of living a lie. After dinner, I took an Uber back to my hotel, feeling a mix of nostalgia and determination. Tomorrow, I needed to find a place to live, a new start away from the ghosts of my past. The next day, I learned from a colleague that Alex was back in town, which stirred a sense of urgency within me. I tried calling his parents, but they gave me the usual response: "Back off." Frustrated, I decided to stake out the emergency room for 4 nights, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. During those nights, I was surprised by how busy the hospital was, with ambulances arriving constantly. To pass the time, I brought a book and snacks. On the second night, needing to use the restroom, I ventured inside the hospital. A security guard asked if I needed help, and I inquired about Alex. He informed me that doctors' names were withheld unless I had an appointment and directed me to the main entrance. I thanked him and left, feeling more determined than ever to connect with Alex. On the fourth night, I finally saw him. He was walking from the doctor's parking lot to the entrance. My heartbeat quickened. I almost called out to him, but he disappeared inside before I could gather my thoughts. At least I knew he was back. After several days of searching, I found a nice, furnished one-bedroom apartment near the hospital. It had underground parking and security, which made me feel safer in the city. I settled in quickly, knowing it was essential to establish a new routine. Returning to the emergency room, I dealt with the usual cases: accidents, stabbings, heart attacks. The stark contrast between the American obsession with obesity and the generally better nutrition I had seen in Africa was striking. 2 weeks after my return, I met with my attorney, Olivia, to discuss the divorce. There wasn't much property or money to divide, so I told her Sarah could keep everything in our shared apartment. Olivia had prepared the divorce petition and I instructed her to proceed. I was surprised Sarah hadn't initiated it, assuming she would want to move on. Back at my apartment, I realized I needed a hobby outside of work. My motorcycle wouldn't arrive for a few months, so I decided to look for another one. After researching online, I visited a couple of local KTM stores and settled on the 890 Adventure R, adding accessories for long-distance riding. It wasn't cheap, but I felt it was a necessary investment for my new life. My attorney emailed me with updates. Sarah had been served with divorce papers. If she stalled, Olivia would file a petition with the court, which would likely be granted after a year. Given Sarah's affair, I knew the divorce would be finalized in about 6 months. The process felt strangely liberating. Just as I was settling into this new routine, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, I saw a man in a suit standing outside. As I approached, he checked his phone and asked, "Sarah Thompson?" Confused, I replied, "Yes, who are you?" He handed me a large envelope. "You have been served." Before I could react, he took a picture of me holding the envelope and quickly walked to his car. Crap, I muttered to myself. I knew this was coming. I had done something I probably shouldn't have. I followed Alex after his shift 2 days ago to find out where he lived. Just a few blocks from our old apartment, I had gathered the courage to approach him, needing closure or perhaps a rekindling of what we once shared. Dressing carefully, I chose an outfit I knew he liked: skinny jeans, high heels, and a white sleeveless blouse that highlighted my figure. I pulled my hair back into a ponytail, hoping to present the best version of myself. As I walked to his building, I felt a mix of determination and vulnerability. I picked up a 6-pack of his favorite IPA and a bottle of California Chardonnay for myself, thinking it might ease the tension. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the call button for his apartment. After a few rings, I heard his voice. "Hi, Alex. Is that you?" I asked, my heart racing. "Who's this?" he responded, suspicion lacing his tone. "It's me, Sarah, your wife." Silence fell between us, heavy and uncomfortable. "Can I come up?" I pleaded. More silence. "I'd like to talk to you." After what felt like an eternity, the buzzer sounded, and I entered the building. My heart thudded in my chest as I took the elevator to his floor. I knocked on his door, my hands shaking slightly. When he finally opened it, I wasn't surprised by the mix of emotions on his face: surprise, anger, maybe even a hint of sadness. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Hi, Sarah. What brings you here tonight?" he asked, keeping his distance. "Alex, I wanted to talk to you. You've been hard to reach and even harder to find," I replied, stepping inside when he gestured for me to enter. I noticed the kitchen was clean, but it felt like a different world. His world. I walked to the kitchen counter and saw he had already poured himself a glass. I pulled out the bottle of wine I had brought and offered it to him. He took it, glancing at the screw cap with a hint of disdain. I poured her a glass, trying to ease the tension, but he didn't seem interested. Instead, He pulled out a can of IPA beer and offered it to me. I declined, citing my hospital duty that night. Let's sit at the table, I suggested, deciding that the living room was too casual for what we needed to discuss. This conversation needed a more serious tone. As we settled into our seats, I tried to read his expression. Alex looked more serious than I'd ever seen him. My stomach knotted as I started. You scared the hell out of me when you called the hotel and had Brian tell me you were dead. His eyes widened. He didn't recognize your voice. I was shocked when I got home and found your note and wedding ring, he replied, placing the gold ring on the table between us. He stared at it, but he didn't touch it. I tried talking to your family, I continued, but none of them wanted to speak to me. Your father repeatedly told me to go to hell. I guess I deserved it. Ever since you left, I've been in some kind of hell, I confessed, my voice shaking. What did you expect me to do? Alex shot back. I found out you were having fun with Brian for a while, and you thought I wouldn't do anything about it. What kind of idiot do you take me for? I felt a wave of anger wash over me. It wasn't like that. I protested, desperate to defend myself. I was lonely. You were always at the hospital, never home. And when you were exhausted and never had time for me. So, it was okay to have fun with another man? To ignore our marriage? He leaned forward, his voice rising. Why couldn't you at least talk to me and say you wanted to end it? Why deceive me for so long? Alex stared at the table, refusing to look at me, taking a long drink from his glass. Did you sign the divorce papers? He finally asked, his voice low. No, I don't want a divorce. I want us to be a family again. I'm still your wife and want to be your wife and the mother of your children, I said, trying to convey the depth of my feelings. He laughed, a harsh sound. You've got to be kidding. Are you completely delusional? No, I still love you very much. I want us to be together again, I insisted, desperation creeping into my tone. Jesus, you're delusional. I'm not going to be your husband a day longer than I have to be. My lawyer is ready to file the divorce without you. Our marriage is irretrievably broken, thanks to you. It's over. You started this by cheating, and I'm just finishing it, he said, his voice firm. What does it take to get over a divorce and become a couple again? I pleaded, feeling the tears welling up. I don't want to be married to you, Sarah. You broke us. We're going our separate ways. I've had an amazing experience since leaving Albany, and I'm not going back to my old life, he said, his tone unyielding. Alex, we can be good together. I know it, I argued, feeling the heat of desperation rise in my chest. No, we can't. You enjoy spreading your legs too much for other men. This water is poisoned. It's over. He stood up, making it clear he wanted this conversation to end. I finished my wine, feeling the weight of his words crushing me. I stood up and moved toward him, hoping to reignite some spark, some memory of what we had. I took his hand, pulled him to me, and kissed him softly, hoping he'd remember what it felt like to be with me. He pulled away after a second, his expression unreadable. Don't forget to take this with you, he said, pointing to his wedding ring on the table. I picked it up, placing it in my bag, feeling the finality of the gesture settle over me. As I walked out of his apartment, the realization hit me hard. We were done. Alex was truly over. He and I would never have a life together. I loved him, but I had cast him aside for something that wasn't worth the cost. Brian wasn't a prize. He was a fleeting distraction that had cost me a husband I didn't want to lose. I felt like such a fool, and deep down, I knew I deserved this pain. It was time to sign the papers and let Alex go. The past month in Berlin had flown by. I was buried in editing hundreds of hours of video, dubbing in both English and German. Closed captioning had become a labor of love, though exhausting. Amid this, I sent Alex a few emails with short videos from his adventures with his Honda in Africa. He looked good, even in the clips where he had thrown his motorcycle. We shared laughter over those moments, but my heart still ached. I had asked Ingrid, whose husband works for the government, to check on Alex before our trip to Africa. Thankfully, he was who he said he was. Recently, I reached out to her again for an update. Ryan discovered that Alex was back working in the ER, and that his lawyer had filed for divorce. The application had been registered a few weeks ago, meaning he would soon be officially divorced. That was good news. I had something important to share with him, but I didn't want to do it while he was still angry with Sarah. I needed him to focus on me. Today was significant. It was the day my divorce was finalized. I held the official document in my hand, relief washing over me. Now I could finally move on. Lily had been calling and writing often about her book and videos. She sent clips of me doing silly things, like the time I almost collided with a herd of cows. We shared plenty of laughter, but I had to be honest with her about Sarah's visit. Lily listened patiently to my rants, and when she mentioned having an announcement for me in a couple of weeks, I figured it was about her book. A week after the divorce, I found myself at Albany Airport, ready to fly to Berlin via Chicago and London. The trip would take about 15 hours, landing me around noon. I needed to see Lily. It had been almost 2 months since we last met. After landing, I went through customs, picked up my bag, and took a cab to the Parkview Hotel in Alexanderplatz. Once I checked in and freshened up, I set out to find Lily's office. Using Google Maps, I navigated the streets and arrived at her building around 4 p.m. To my surprise, her office was only a 15-minute walk away. I found her company listed in the lobby directory and took the elevator up. At reception, a young woman greeted me in German. I asked to see Lily Martinez, and after a quick call, she told me to wait. While I sat there, I felt eyes on me, scrutinizing. After what felt like an eternity, a woman approached. "Dr. Thompson?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, surprised they knew who I was. "Follow me, please." We walked through sleek offices, and I discreetly checked my fly. Thankfully, it was zipped. After what felt like a long walk, I saw Lily coming around the corner, her face lighting up. "Alex," she exclaimed, rushing toward me. She hugged me tightly and kissed me softly, oblivious to the eyes watching us. "When did you get to Berlin?" "A few hours ago. I wanted to clean up before coming here," I joked, feeling the warmth of her presence. Lily took my hand and led me to her editing room. "I want to show you my work on the videos from our travels," she said, her excitement evident. She looked beautiful, dressed in a long black skirt and a white blouse. I felt a mix of nostalgia and longing. Over the next few hours, we talked about her book and the videos she was working on. Some would be on YouTube, while others would appear on the publisher's website. I admired her passion, and it reignited something in me. "Do you have time for dinner with me?" I asked, eager to reconnect. "I'd like to know what's going on with you beyond your book." "How long can you stay?" she asked. "I can stay for a few days. My return flight is in 3 days, but I can change it if needed," I replied, hoping for an invitation to extend my stay. "I want you to meet my family. I've told them a lot about you," she said, her eyes sparkling. I was surprised but intrigued. "Oh, I suppose I can do that. But first, I need to eat and try a good German beer," I suggested. "No, you won't. I'm leaving with you now. It's been months since I've seen you, and I have important news," she insisted. I nodded, excitement bubbling within me. As we walked out together, heads turned to watch us. I asked her where she lived, and she mentioned having an apartment nearby. I briefly wondered if Lily had a husband. The last thing I wanted was to be the other man. My time in Africa had been a thrilling escape from reality, but the comfort of home brought back the complexities I tried to ignore. As we settled into my hotel room, the atmosphere shifted. Lily and I began kissing passionately, our clothes falling away like barriers that had kept us apart for too long. I reacquainted myself with her touch, realizing how deeply I had missed her. After the turmoil of my marriage, being with Lily felt like a rebirth, a return to the person I used to be. We broke away from each other around 9 o'clock, feeling a mix of hunger and the need to regroup. We headed to the hotel restaurant, which offered a range of German dishes and local beers. Lily ordered a Diet Coke, which caught me off guard. "You used to love beer," I remarked, raising an eyebrow. She shrugged, a playful smile dancing on her lips. "Just trying to be healthy. Besides, I want to remember this night." "Why do your family want to meet me?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I told them about you, our travels in Africa, the adventures we shared. They're excited because you're from the U.S. My parents have visited my aunt in Florida a few times, and they love the idea of meeting someone from your side of the world," Lily replied, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. We can visit them tomorrow. It's just a 6-hour train ride. Where do they live? I inquired, leaning in. In Ulm in the south. My dad worked as an engineer at Volkswagen, and my mom is an accountant. Both are retired now and have more time to travel, she explained. That sounds lovely, I said, deciding to go with the flow. Lily then asked, so, you're now officially a free man? I couldn't help but smile broadly. Yes, and I have the paperwork to prove it. I pulled out the divorce papers, watching as her expression shifted from curiosity to delight. Congratulations. How does it feel? She asked, examining the documents carefully. It feels good. It was inevitable once I found out she had been with someone else for almost 2 years. She didn't want to be with me, and that realization was freeing, I admitted, the weight of my past lifting slightly. What do you want to do now? Lily probed, her tone suggesting she had something specific in mind. I took a deep breath, considering my future. Honestly, I'm not sure how much longer I want to stay in Albany. The hospital pays well, but there's too much history there. I need to explore more of the world. You've given me the travel bug, I said with a grin. Her smile widened, and we spent the rest of the night in my hotel room, talking and sharing stories until sleepiness finally overtook us. The next morning, Lily packed her belongings, and after a few phone calls, we took a cab to the train station. I liked European trains, the punctuality, the ease of travel, and the relaxed security compared to airports made everything feel seamless. When we arrived in Ulm, we were met by Lily's parents, a couple in their 60s. Lily bore a striking resemblance to her mother, with the same bright eyes and flowing hair. Her father, Ethan, had the same easy smile, and I could tell where Lily got her charm. We found Ethan's Passat station wagon and drove to their house, a charming older home that had clearly been well cared for over the years. As we walked into their home, I felt an immediate warmth. The interior was cozy, filled with family photographs and mementos of their travels. Ethan offered me a beer, while Lily got drinks for everyone, red wine for her mother, ice water for herself, and beer for us. As we settled into the living room, the silence felt charged with curiosity, and I realized I was under scrutiny. So, you're American. Where in America? Ethan asked, breaking the ice. Albany, New York, about 2.5 hours north of New York City, I replied, trying to sound confident. Interesting. What brings you to Germany? Sophia, Lily's mother, asked, her eyes assessing me with a mixture of concern and curiosity. I came to see Lily, of course, I said, glancing at Lily, who smiled encouragingly. As Ethan launched into stories about his days at Volkswagen, Lily watched me closely, gauging my interactions. Her parents were engaging, but I still felt a sense of pressure to impress them. Sophia, while modest, shared her experiences in accounting and how she missed the excitement of working but enjoyed traveling with Ethan now that they were retired. Dinner was a relaxed affair, filled with laughter and stories about Lily's childhood. Lily got into motorcycling because of me, Ethan mentioned, pride evident in his voice. I've owned motorcycles most of my life, he continued. I still have a BMW 1200 for long-distance travel and a smaller bike for local trips. Sophia often rides with me. Dinner preparations filled the kitchen, the scent of home-cooked food wafting through the air. I felt like I was being evaluated, and I was acutely aware of Lily's parents' expectations. They wanted to know more about me, not just as Lily's boyfriend but as a potential partner. After dinner, I expected to get a separate bedroom, but to my surprise, there were fresh towels in the same room. When we climbed into bed, I instinctively left my underwear on. Why are you doing that? Lily asked, teasing me with a playful smile. Because we're at your parents' house, and it just doesn't feel right, I replied. She laughed softly. They've slept undressed all their lives. Take it off. I want you close to me. As I removed my boxers, the mood shifted, and the conversation turned serious. How long? She asked, her expression suddenly more intense. How long for what? I questioned, confused. How many weeks until the baby arrives? She pressed, a glimmer of excitement in her eyes. Baby? I repeated, caught off guard. Alex, you're going to be a father, she said, pulling out a plastic pregnancy test with 2 blue stripes. I saw a doctor in Berlin a month ago. I have an ultrasound appointment in a week. My heart raced. I had imagined many futures, but this was entirely unexpected. I felt a rush of emotions, joy, fear, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. In a moment of spontaneity, I got out of bed and rummaged through my bag. I pulled out a small box and opened it, revealing a simple yet elegant ring. "Will you marry me?" I asked, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in my mind. Lily's face lit up, and she nodded fervently. "Yes, yes, yes." We embraced tightly, the excitement bubbling between us. Remembering that her parents would want to hear our news, we quickly dressed and headed to find them. In the hallway, we found Sophia and Ethan. "We have some news," Lily said, beaming. Sophia already seemed to know, a knowing smile on her face. "You're pregnant?" she asked softly, her eyes gleaming. Lily nodded, and her mother rushed to hug her. Ethan's reaction was a mix of surprise and joy. "What can I say?" "We'll welcome you to the family," he said, his tone warm and inviting. A few days later, we married in Berlin with a small gathering of friends and family. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and joy, the kind that comes from new beginnings. We made decisions about our future together, including moving to Albany to be closer to my family. As Lily's pregnancy progressed, we found a lovely 4-bedroom house near my brother's place, ideal for raising children. Lily and my mother bonded over decorating the nursery, while my dad and Ethan took on home improvement projects, excited to create a welcoming space for the twins. The months flew by, and soon our lives became a whirlwind of preparing for the arrival of our daughters. Amid the sleepless nights and countless diaper changes, I found a profound sense of purpose. Lily and I became a team, navigating parenthood together. Just when life seemed to turn the corner, we were gifted with 2 beautiful twin girls, each weighing almost 6 pounds. The moment they entered the world, I felt an overwhelming wave of love wash over me. 2 days later, Lily and I returned to Berlin for my ultrasound appointment. As the doctor ran the wand over her abdomen, we were both anxious yet hopeful. The moment the monitor flickered to life and the heartbeat echoed in the room, my heart soared. "We're having twins," I exclaimed, unable to contain my excitement. Lily's eyes glistened with tears of joy as we celebrated this unexpected but incredible news. Shortly after returning to America, while shopping for children's furniture at IKEA with my sister-in-law Nicole, fate intervened. I spotted a woman staring at us, recognition dawning on her face. It was Sarah, Alex's ex-wife, the one whose infidelity had shattered my previous life. "Hey, Nicole, how's it going?" Sarah greeted, her tone casual, but I could sense the tension beneath it. Nicole introduced me pointedly. "Sarah, this is Lily, Alex's wife. She's having twins." Sarah's smile faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered. "Congratulations," she said, though her tone lacked sincerity. As Nicole and I walked away, she muttered under her breath, "Strumpet." We exchanged knowing glances, the shared history of Alex and Sarah's tumultuous past hanging in the air. Later that night, when Alex came home, the two of us made love, our bodies intertwined as we dreamed of adventures yet to come. While motorcycle trips might be on hold for now, Alex's parents offered their motorhome for family excursions, a tempting prospect for future journeys together. In that moment, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. This was the life I had wanted, filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a bright future with my new family.